Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Lisa Cooter from Petawawa, and I'm the clinical manager for the mental health services team here. And I have one of my colleagues, Chris Quigley, who is our intake and crisis intervention coordinator. Before we start, I'm just curious if anyone can let me know, do any of you guys have a walk-in or type of walk-in, or you're thinking of trying to do a walk-in in your regions? If anybody has some knowledge about it already.
Hey Lisa, it's Angela from Kingston, and we implement a walk-in on a weekly basis, and we've been running it for about a year now.
Okay, great. Okay, so what I thought, now I realize that I have done this based on a mental health perspective because it was for our mental health team, and the whole concept was for us was to figure out how to make services more flexible and give families more options, and that really was kind of what drove us in that journey. Jonathan, you could go to the next slide. And I guess the question for us was, why would we want to do a walk-in clinic? And what we noticed here in Petawawa for sure, and I suspect it's similar everywhere else, but a military community that's constantly changing, the walk-in actually fit really well with that, because we were able to be available to people whom we were just posting in, people who were being posted out, deployments, so that they didn't have to go through intake and then go on a waiting list. And so in that respect, we really felt it would be flexible and responsive to when clients needed it. You don't need to make an appointment. It also is proving to help us to reduce some wait times for clients because we can redirect them to the walk-in if they're really in need, and then that way they're getting their needs met. It also allows us to maximize our resources so that by doing the walk-in, we can actually have our staff engage in some of the other programs that are really important, like group services, because by having that walk-in, it allowed us to help get those people coming into the door that might not walk into the door for a long time. It also helped to reduce some no-shows and service dropouts. That's one of the things that in mental health we often deal with, is people sort of engage in services and then they don't show up, or they kind of drop out. And that was sort of the guiding principle for us. Wouldn't you agree, Chris? Mm-hmm. And I had come from Toronto in children's mental health, and walk-in clinics were becoming really, really popular there. And so I kind of brought those ideas up here. And what we're noticing is that it's working extremely well. I would say to the point that, like, even last night, a walk-in operates every Wednesday between the hours of 4 and 8. And we typically have 4 to 5 families coming in on a Wednesday night, and we're able to see all of them. And some of them might move on to doing an intake. Some of them might come back to the walk-in. But for some, it's actually the only appointment they need. And that's making a big difference for us. Any questions about that from anybody? Okay. Jonathan, could you go to the next slide?
Yeah, just one question from Hélène.
Yeah.
Are we the only ones having problems with audio? It is broken at times. Okay, so Hélène, if you're finding the audio is on and off, and not working so well, feel free to call into the conference line. If you remember I've just switched it to the slide that I first put up, but this is the conference line. I'm just putting the pointer on it. So you can call that up if that's easier and listen via phone and just watch the slides if you turn down your speakers on your phone. So that's another option if you're having problems with your audio.
Is anyone else having difficulty hearing me? Okay. All right. If we go to the next slide, for those of you who do sort of traditional services, and actually maybe I could ask a question. How many of you are from a mental health team and looking for sort of information around that as opposed to people who might be coming from like a deployment program?
So for this question, feel free, folks, to use your bullhorn. It looks like this. And you can put a check mark for yes or an X for no to the question. Or you can write in the chat, whichever is easiest for you.
Okay, so we've got a few people that are mental health and some that are not. So when we're talking around in the mental health side, so for those of you that aren't on the mental health side, this might not have as much relevance, but I can absolutely talk about how you could use walk-in for any type of your services. But for us, the benefit of a walk-in and or single session is that it really allows us to focus the work and be dynamic. Typically, our team is utilizing a brief narrative approach or a brief solution-focused approach. And what we notice is that change happens immediately because instead of it being an intake, so when I say intake, you know, you're gathering demographic information, you're talking about sort of what are their hopes and desires. When we're doing a single session, we're actually focusing in to do some work right in the session. So the goal is that clients walk out the door with new knowledge and skills. And the time with the client is spent listening, eliciting information about their preferences, like what is really important to them, what's the most pressing issue that they're coming in for, so that we don't spend a lot of time talking about a lot of other things. We actually focus on one thing. And for, like I said before, for many of those clients, one session is all they need. I've included a little snapshot of a book that's actually got some really great ideas and concepts around when you only have 1 hour, how to be really effective if you've only got one session. What are the ways in which to ask questions? How can you get the right kind of information from your clients? If you weren't doing this on a mental health side, walk-in is actually, you could set up walk-in hours so that people could come in. They don't have to book a time with you, and you could actually have 1 or 2 staff available just to do intakes and take information that way. And I know for organizations where maybe you're really, really busy and your telephone is ringing all the time, sometimes having some dedicated hours for walk-in can reduce that because people can come in, know that they can get to see somebody face-to-face, and then you can focus on some of the other things as part of your job and not getting interrupted all the time. I know that that has been really helpful for some of our other programs where they have adapted to a little bit more of a walk-in. People can just kind of come in during those hours, and I think that that has made a big difference there as well. Any questions about that from anybody? Or any comments about what I just said? So the other thing that I wanted to sort of share about is how we implemented it here in Petawawa. And I think the key for what we did was, it was about really doing a paradigm shift. And what I mean for that is a lot of our clinicians were kind of caught up in an old traditional model of therapy, like you had to, do an assessment, you had to then, put a plan in place, and then you provided the service. And I think in the brief model work that our agencies are supposed to be doing, the single session concept fits really well because it allows us to really focus things. But it meant that we had to really help our team adapt to being more comfortable with actually just doing one session. And so Chris can attest that it was really a lot of training and staff preparation. So we actually put a lot of time into doing some training, getting all of the team trained in a brief model so that they at least had some competency. And then we engaged them in helping us to really figure out how the walk-in program could work. We did a pilot phase, and our pilot phase was bi-weekly Wednesdays. And we chose the hours from 4 to 8 because we noticed that a lot of our families look for evening appointments because it's after work, after school. It's hard for parents to make appointments during the day, hard for families, like if you're working, to make that time. And we used that pilot phase as a time to assess, to work out any kinks, to get feedback from the clients about, is this working? Do we need to do anything different? And the feedback was really, really positive. And in fact, it was so positive that we actually have had to move to a weekly walk-in. So we have walk-in every Wednesday, and we rotate locations. So we have 2 locations for a walk-in so that we can, in Petawawa, we have a north side and a south side. So not every family has access to vehicles. We don't have transportation here, like no busing. So by being on both the north and south side on alternate weeks, we can make sure families from all areas are able to access us. And another thing we did, Chris, was we adapted to offering a single session for families who couldn't make it on the night. So if Wednesday night was busy because maybe you have after-school curricular activities, we now offer walk-ins at like a single session at a time that fits for the family. So they could call myself or Chris and say, oh, I can't make the walk-in hours. And we would say, well, what time can you make? And then we would get one of our workers to do an actual single session at a time that fits for them. And that's really been a key for us, I think, in being successful, is learning how to be really adaptive and flexible to the client needs. And would you say that that's been a positive outcome?
It sure has, because then it's also limited our amount of waiting time for situations that may only need the one session. But I might not know that when they come in and do a full intake.
Yeah. Any comments or questions that I can answer on any of that?
Lisa, how many staff do you have working the model, the walk-in model, and then providing the one-off single sessions?
So our entire team, we've got a team of 9 social workers and myself, so there's 10 of us. Every single one of them participates in the walk-in, and what we do is we have a rotating schedule so that every Wednesday night there are 2 social workers and myself and Chris, and every single one of them does single sessions. But what we will do is we will reach out to the team and say, hey, is anybody available on Tuesday at 2 or 3? Because we have somebody who can't make the walk-in, and we wait for the team to let us know if anybody has availability.
Sounds good.
Yeah, and it's actually been really, really effective for us. Now, I will say that if you didn't have that many staff, you can do it with one person. It just means the number of people you could see would be reduced. So when you have 2 staff on walk-in, they can see, I would say in a 4-hour period, they can see typically 4, like each person could see 2 people if you're spending about 75 minutes in a session. And I see 75 minutes as average. There are some times where we might spend 90 minutes in a session, and that might be because it's more, maybe you're doing a crisis, a risk assessment and a safety plan because they're coming in and they're a lot of distress. But typically, I'd say it's about 75 minutes. And so you could really probably, if you had one person, you could probably see 2 or 3 if you're a really efficient clinician and you can really get comfortable with that single session hour model. You could probably see 3 people in that time frame. But then what I've noticed is by offering the single sessions, it really just, it sort of takes the pressure off. If you can't fit everybody in and on a walk-in night, then they could come back and do a single session, and it actually helps families to kind of feel quite valued. Any other questions? I have a question out there. In Kingston, when you guys are doing your walk-in, Are you guys rotating who does the walk-in? And does it have the same, are you doing it in the same way, or are you doing it more as an intake model?
No, it's definitely following a brief solutions-focused model. It's myself and usually another colleague who does it every Thursday morning from about 9 to 11. And so usually each of us can see about 2. So we can probably see a total of 4 families.
Right.
That morning piece, but recently we have been short-staffed, so it's just been kind of as we can, and then we do offer some, I guess you could call them sort of single sessions on the side, or just redirect them to our intake worker.
Yeah, and are you finding that it's working well for you guys?
Yeah, it's working really well. It kind of ebbs and flows. Like some days are very busy, and then other days we just might have 1 or 2 families, but we get a lot of good service out of there, and we're really addressing those client needs, especially sort of those one-offs who don't need any more or long depth therapy. Sometimes it's a redirection, a referral to an external resource, a referral to our intake member, or connection to other services within the MFRC.
Yeah, and I think that's, there is an ebb and flow for sure that we notice here too. Last night was our walk-in. We had 5 families come in. The week before we had, and when I say families, we had, some were adults, some were parents who came in without their kids looking for some parenting strategies. Last week we had 5. The week before we had 1. So there's definitely an ebb and flow to all of that. And I think just being able to sort of adapt to that is pretty good. I'll say the other thing that we've noticed with the walk-in, and not so much the single sessions, is it's actually been really exciting for the staff because they get to know each other in a different way. So when you're sitting in your office and you're working by yourself, you see your clients, they go. At the walk-in, we're all there together, and so as clients come in, we can chat, we can sort of dialogue, and we consult with one another. So if someone walks out the door or walks in the door with a really big issue, then the clinician can come out and say, oh, can I ask if I've got some ideas? Chris can do some resourcing. So they're actually finding it really empowering for them and really helping them to build better connections with one another. So they're actually doing more collaborative work. I know.
That's what we do here in Kingston. We consult sort of at the 50-minute mark and let the client know we are stepping out, and we'll consult, and we'll usually come back with resources, either a package, kind of like some quick pamphlets that we always keep on hand, some worksheets that can be really solution-focused and driven with the client's goals and their presenting concerns. And then that collaborative approach as well, if I'm going back in with the client, my intake worker might be arranging some respite childcare and getting those packages, and then the client is really sent off feeling like their needs have been met. And that's satisfying.
Yeah. The other thing that we found that we did here, and I don't know what you've done in Kingston or if anybody else has ever thought about, is we modified a lot of our documents to create documents that were specifically geared towards single session so that it actually helped clinicians to focus their sessions in, so why did they come in, helping clients, helping the staff to elicit strengths. So there's the session note, we actually created it specifically for that. We created a consent form that's a briefer consent form than what you might typically give a family for regular services. We provided a client information sheet that's very much geared to helping them identify their primary goal for walking in. And for any of you, I'm happy to share any of those resources with you if that's helpful at all. It has definitely made a difference for us. And then what Chris has done is she has created a whole bunch of walk-in resource bins so that we have resources in a bin that go into every room so the clinician has access to paper, crayons, art supplies, Kleenex, pens, things like that, so that you've got everything together. And also putting together a whole bunch of resource folders so that if someone wants to come out and grab a parenting resource, they can run back in and it's all there together. I think we're kind of getting close to our end time. Does anybody have any other questions or comments, any ideas about what could be possible in your area?
Sure. Implement your walk-in clinics in the evening times? Did you guys ever start off in the morning time?
Sorry, could you repeat that?
You guys always implement your walk-in clinic in the evening time?
So we have the actual walk-in hours, but I think Kingston, you guys are doing it in the daytime hours, right?
Yes.
Yeah. We did, and the reason we did that was kind of based on the fact that we were having a lot of demand for evening appointments. And so we thought the walk-in would be better. Now, I will say there would be benefits, and in my previous career in children's mental health, we had a 5-day-a-week walk-in where we actually had walk-in hours in the, they rotated, so like on a Monday, Thursday, it would be from 9 till noon, and then afternoons, and then like a Wednesday evening to be more flexible to families. And that is certainly something we are going to continue to assess. And that's why we added the single sessions, was so that the families that couldn't make the afternoon sessions could have a session that was similar to a walk-in, but it was more planned so that we could at least get them seen during a time that fit for them. We just haven't had enough of a demand yet to pick a day during the day that might work for us. But we're going to continue to assess that.
And the other piece for us in Petawawa is space. So we have to be mindful that in the day it's not as easy to find space for the clinicians to meet privately versus in the evening when everybody else has gone home and we just take over the office.
Yeah, that's actually a good point. Our team is located in 3 different buildings, and there just isn't a space to do a walk-in because we don't have enough waiting areas for people. And if you have your own clients, you wouldn't be able to see we wouldn't be able to use that office for a walk-in session. So those have been some of our barriers for sure.
Lisa, you've got another question from Danny. Do you ever see children or youth at the walk-in?
Yes, we do, quite a lot actually. And I mean, children will come in with their parents, particularly if they're under the age of 12. And in a walk-in session, we will see them, you know, we might have a mom and dad and the kids together. We might break it up much like you might, you know, you might talk to the child, but we get a lot of youth coming in. That's actually probably our bigger area of growth and surprise, that we were seeing youth coming in. And they come in, you know, parents come in and actually drop them off, and then they come in and do the session, and then they walk out and mom and dad meets them. So yeah, we are seeing a lot of them.
Great.
Yeah.
Any more questions from folks? If you want to put it in the chat, that's fine as well.
Yeah, and if any questions pop up that you know, just any ideas or thoughts or suggestions, you know, we're really open to all those things. But I think my contact information is there. Please feel free to reach out, and I'd be really happy to share if this is of interest for you and you're thinking about it or wondering how I could put a walk-in type model in, but it's a different type of program. I would love to be part of those kind of conversations. So, but I thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Lisa.
Excellent. Okay, thank you folks for joining us today. And thanks very much to Lisa and her team for preparing this. That was excellent. Lisa, if you could just stay on the line for a minute after everybody else signs off, that would be great.
Yeah, for sure.
So for everyone else, have a great afternoon.
Thanks, Lisa. Thanks, Jonathan.
Thank you.